All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the One Up Sales Development Podcast. To my next guest that I got on today, it's someone truly, really special. It's funny because I've listened to this person's episode with David Delaney on the Sales Development Podcast many times, and his voice, he has a distinct voice. You can recognize him exactly who he is, where he's at. So this individual is coming through hot. He is a sales development leader. He's been in a SDR manager role for about, I would say, 5+ years now. He is from the front lines, He started out as an SDR himself. He worked his way up the ranks. He also is an author of Code to Committed. He is the SDR manager. He has his own blog too as well. Please give us a warm welcome to not the one and only, Mr. Kyle VamVouris, SDR manager at Bloom Globo.
Hello. Whoa, please hold the applause. Just a normal guy.
Kyle, thank you again so much for having on this episode with us at the One Up Sales Development Podcast. You really, your works is very, I have a lot to say thanks for it. And the reason I say is because I've been following you for quite some time now. Not only that, it's that when I created a thread and when I reached out to help, you were very helpful. You actually helped me several times on a personal level that, it's for another conversation for today, which actually was very thoughtful and I'm very appreciative of that because we actually, implement what you taught and gave you back. So welcome to the One Up Sales Development Podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Happy to help any time. So this is great.
Yeah. So Kyle, without further ado, for our audience who's listening today, why don't you go ahead and just take it away? Give us a brief introduction of who you are currently, what you do, and how did you end up in sales development?
So, we could start from the beginning. A little bit about who I am. So, I've built and scaled multiple inside sales, SDR teams, whatever you want to call them, BDRs, and I've done it very successfully. Both times that I've had to start from scratch, they've turned into really great high producing teams, and I absolutely love the world of sales development. And I could talk a little bit about why. So I started in sales development in 2014, 2013, around there, as an SDR at Intuit, specifically a company called Vamvours that was acquired by Intuit before I went there. So I know there's a lot of people in the Vamvours world, or at least who were part of that company beforehand. So they can speak to some of the experience, but it was a really aggressive environment. It's a lot of cold calls, almost no email at all. And it was just dialing for dollars, handing off to the account executives that were either going to close a deal or not. And we were compensated when the deal closed. So it was this really tough environment, but they did a lot of training. They provided a lot of resources. So as long as you took advantage of everything and you had enough grit to make it through, like, you really were set up for success, not only in that role, but also in an account executive role and whatever you choose to pursue moving forward. So that was my first taste of the SDR world. I got promoted to an account executive there. I did that for, I think, 2 years. And after that, I decided to write the book Code to Committed. So wow. I wrote that book a few years back. I ended up rewriting it, I think, last year. And it was an Amazon bestseller. It's done really well. A lot of people have gotten value from it, which is great. And it's just my account. It's things that have worked for me and the teams I've built, and hopefully will work for anyone who reads it. I often say there's no one right way of doing anything. Everyone who gives sales advice, they might give a little bit of a different advice and it works for them. But then the other advice works for someone else, right? So it really depends on the person more than it is the piece of advice. And we could talk about endless examples of that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, in sales development, in sales, I would argue even in life and in most career choices, it's the individual that's responsible for getting the result. How you go about getting that result is going to be different. But as long as the result is met, that's what's important. So that's why I'm passionate about sales development. I have a background in it. I wrote a book on it. I've been really successful at building those teams. It's honestly just what I'm good at. So if it's not broke, don't fix
it. Oh my God, I love that. Kyle, so please tell me about your book, Code to Committed. So there's a lot of individuals out there who has a passion, right? They go out there, they do what they love, they're really good at it, but it only takes a specific percentage of that person to actually say, you know what, I want to write a book. But then again, out of that percentage, just takes another percentage to go, you know what, I will write the book, and you actually get you started.
Yep.
So what got the ball rolling for you to actually take action and get that started with Code to Committed?
Because I said I would. It's really like what it comes down to is if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I mean, that's just at the end of the day, that's who I am as a person. And I really liked the idea of writing the book for a couple of reasons. One is because I think I had some good advice, and
Yeah.
a book is a good medium for giving good advice. So I
Yeah.
wanted to put it out for that reason. And then the other reason was it was very unlikely that I would write a book. I dropped out of college to pursue stand-up comedy when I was really young, when I was in college, obviously, as far as really young is. And, and that was always like this blemish on my resume where, where's your degree?
Oh,
It's like, well, I don't
yeah.
have one. And when I thought about writing the book, I was like, well, people without degrees don't really write books yet. And then so I went and decided to write the book. And obviously that's not
Oh,
true. There's a lot of great leaders out there who never had a college degree and who wrote great books that are really powerful and meaningful. And I don't think I stand on the same podium as them at all, but that was inspirational is, hey, even if you don't have this formal education, let's put words on paper. And if those words inspire action and that action leads to something good, then it was worth writing the piece in the first place. So that's really what motivated the book writing. And fortunately, I think it's done a lot of good for the people who've read it and implemented some of the stuff I talk about.
oh wow. Okay. Kyle, I love that. Writing a book, like you mentioned, is a great way to get your name out there, right? Especially, if you have something to give and share to the world in terms of best practices and something that they can take action on and really do it on their end, then that's when it becomes valuable. But what really got me spotted too, like you mentioned, so you dropped out of college to pursue comedy. Was this before? Was this like in year one, year two? What happened there during school?
So it was probably
Yeah.
year 2 of community college. But to be clear, it wasn't like I was good at school, right?
No.
So I don't want anyone to think like, wow, he really took a risk. It's like I wasn't doing well. I
Yeah.
didn't like it. I was doing stand-up comedy in the evenings. I was just going to class, and going is a really polite way of saying it. I mean, I was a body in the seat, but my head was in the sky, and I was also working at a gym, Crunch Fitness, and I was
Oh
selling
yeah.
gym memberships, and I was good at it. I was actually really good at selling gym memberships. And what ended up happening was I was getting to a point where I was actually making okay money. It wasn't great, but I was still living at home at the time, and I was not doing well in any of my classes. So I was like, why am I even doing this? So I just stopped. My parents flipped out, and I just didn't sign up for the next semester. It gave me way more time to work on my comedy. I've performed at Cobb's, Punchline, the Comedy Store in LA, right? That's
Oh
down south by you.
yeah.
And I really loved it. But while I was going through this experience, um, some of the leadership at the Crunch Fitness I worked at actually got hired at Intuit. So they referred me
Oh
because I did well there. And Intuit overlooked that I didn't have a degree because I had a good referral, and they made me do a mock cold call and it went well. So they were like, throw them on board and let's see what happens.
wow. Okay. So first things first, if you can break it down for our audience here, what is
Yeah.
into it?
They make QuickBooks, TurboTax. The
Gotcha. Oh,
specific
of
business
course,
unit I was in was,
into
yeah,
it.
the specific business unit I was in was Demand Force. So that was a company they acquired before I was there.
Yeah.
They
Got
were
it.
the parent
Okay.
company.
Okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into this because I love it when it comes to this situation because there's a lot of people out there, companies would always say no matter what, hey, this is the bare minimum. You gotta have an undergrad. You gotta have an undergrad, BS, BA degree. You gotta have a degree. But
Yep.
like you are just one of many in there that shows people you don't have to have a degree to be successful in life. You really gotta just find what you're good at, become truly valuable at it, doing something that not everyone can offer and be known for it, and then really become valuable and to the point where you can make it happen. And I think you are a great example of what you're doing today. I mean, not saying that college is not something that they shouldn't do or proceed or take, but you really met like a really good person to show and say, hey, you're a good example. Like you should go to school, try college and try it out. But if you don't end up finishing it's not the end of the world. And Kyle VamVouris is a great example of that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, but I would also suggest everyone go to college. You know, I actually am
Yeah.
a huge advocate for college. If my kids didn't go to college, I would be disappointed. Like, I want them to have a strong education. I'm a unique case, and it's not lost on me that that's true. Um, I didn't do well in school, but I also happen to have a very strong work ethic, which that's typically not the same person, right? Usually someone who doesn't do well in school doesn't have a strong work ethic, but I was so afraid of failing at everything but school. Like school, I didn't care about at all for some reason, but in every other aspect of my life, like I just didn't want to let people down. So when I was working at Crunch Fitness, I would work incredibly hard. I was always the first one in, and I was just selling gym memberships. Like most people don't care about that kind of job, but I really took it very seriously, and that's just not normal. Most people drop out of college because they don't have the work ethic, and that's why companies use it, right? I've interviewed people who don't have a college degree and I've not hired them. And it's not because they don't have a college degree, it's just the lack of a college degree. And then what I saw in the interview made me lead to that decision that I don't know if this is going to be the right fit here. So I am a strong advocate for school. I actually go to school part-time now, and I'm
Nice.
working through getting my degree now. And listen, do I wish that if I could go back, would I do it all? No, probably not, because I would be in a totally different place. Um, I like the path I took. It is harder. It is harder. Trust me, if I put my resume through any large company, it's going to get rejected immediately because of lack of degree, when those large companies would be crazy not to hire me.
Right.
So
Right.
you have to balance pros and cons. For me, it worked out.
Yeah, and I'm really happy to hear and see that too. I'm a big fan of you and your work, Kyle, especially everything
Well,
that you
thank you.
do comes to the blog, your article, and even your book. When you just mentioned, I was like, you know what? It's on Amazon. Is it only on ebooks only? Just or no, there's
No,
no
no, it's
format?
a physical book.
Oh, is
Yeah,
there?
it's somewhere on this bookshelf. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, I gotta double check on that too, because I prefer having books like physically. But I think I bought the
Oh yeah.
e-format from your
Okay.
end. But I read it. I was like, oh, it's not bad. Kyle know what he's doing.
I know a thing or two.
Yeah. Kyle, so I wanted to dive a little bit deeper. Let's talk about your comedy thing. How did that happen? Were you always a Dave Chappelle fan? Were you always the funny guy in the group? You always making people laugh? What made you
Yeah.
take that route, man?
Well, I told my first joke in front of an audience in fifth grade, and it's a funny story. I was in science class. I remember the joke. This is the first joke I told in front of a crowd. Science
Oh,
class, the teacher is explaining different tools used in the lab, and she pulls up this graduated cylinder, those long cylinders that you pour liquid into,
yeah,
and
yeah,
she
yeah.
says, class, this is a graduated cylinder. And I raised my hand in the back of the class, fifth grader, and she said, yeah, Kyle, what's your question? And I said, what college did it graduate from? And it got a huge laugh. It got a huge laugh. And from that moment, I knew the stage is where I needed to be. And it's kind of a cool story. I went to high school or middle school after that. I was always involved in theater. In high school, I was very active in theater. I was the first sophomore to be accepted into the most advanced drama class. I was drama club president. Like I was very, very involved. I did a lot of improv, and I liked acting a lot. I liked improv more, and I was also pretty funny. I was pretty funny. Some of my stand up from back then is probably cringy to watch now, but I was okay. I was okay. So when I was in high school, when I turned 17 years old, that's when the comedy club would let me do an open mic night. That was in Pleasanton, and I did my first open mic night, and I loved it. So
Oh,
at 17
nice.
years old, I kind of ran around and did stand up, and it was always something I did on the side, and then through college, and then eventually when I was going through the work world and I was an SDR and then an account executive, you have a choice to make. You can be a broke comedian for 13 years and maybe make it, or you can make money, have a family, and that aligned with more of what I visualize my future as. But I'll hop on stage again one day. It'll be when I'm older and more financially secure, but I'll eventually get back on stage.
Oh, nice. Okay, so that's your passion and dream. Going out. It takes a lot of guts for people to really go out there and just stand in front of a crowd, even if you're telling jokes or
Yeah.
maybe a speech or just sharing a class in-person presentation. Like, what are a few things that you took to overcome those kind of obstacles and really just be like, you know what? I'm gonna go on stage and not seem nervous, and I'm just gonna make it happen. Was there like breathing techniques going on? Is there preparation, notes in your back book, or what does that look like to you?
No, I mean, everything's written before you go up there, so that's helpful. But same with cold calling. I mean, it's really applicable when you're making cold calls, which is when I'm on stage, that's where I am. There's nothing else in my head. I barely even see an audience. And it's because for me, in that moment, I'm in this super focus, this state of Zen. It's the only time where my mind is perfectly clear. Now, if you can achieve that level of flow or whatever you want to call it, magic on a cold call, you'll be a wizard. You'll be able to book any meeting that comes across your phone. And the trick, in my opinion, is to separate yourself from the other person. And you can't do
Nice.
it fully. So on a cold call, for example, you got to separate yourself from a prospect. Doing stand-up comedy, you have to separate yourself from the audience. But they're always going to influence you. But I can separate myself from if a joke doesn't land, the next joke I'm still saying with the same vibrato as the joke before that failed. And
Wow.
I have before won a crowd back over. Same thing on a cold call. Right now, it's less forgiving in some ways. People aren't drinking, for example. I mean, if they were, maybe we'd all hit quota. But the important thing to think of is for everybody, especially if you get nervous on the phone, is to disconnect yourself from the person you're speaking with. Like an example I'll give a lot of people, or a exercise I'll give a lot of SDRs, is make calls without looking at the title or the name of the person until they answer the phone. What are we
Nice.
looking at people's titles for? Does it matter? They're on our list. We're giving them a call regardless of their title. Knowing it beforehand doesn't help you. And when the phone's ringing, look at the guy or girl and say, hey, what's this person's name and title? All right, now I'll talk to them. And just separate yourself from, people get so worked up before they even make a phone call. So I prefer flip it and just why don't we just call and then figure out what we're doing?
Oh,
Be
wow.
forced to be put on the spot.
Okay. Okay. A few things, sir. I love that. So, and this is coming from you as an SDR manager who experienced this from time to time. And I would assume that, SDR and BDRs are typically really young face, right? They just
Yep.
fresh out of college and stuff like that.
Right.
They're calling
Right.
on VPs and directors, 10 plus years of sales experience, and they never sold in their entire life. And hopping on a call, they're speaking to these people that are highly tenured, and then they would get
Yep.
these butterflies. And when they actually get connected with an executive of Sound Deep, was like, hello, or hello, this is Bob. And they're like, oh, damn, oh my God, hello, and get shy. And then you right there just really telling, hey, don't worry about the title. Why don't we just go ahead and make that mental switch in terms of just doing the opposite? So then that way, when they pick up the phone, it's like, hey, how's it going? Da, 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 whatever. And then they look over and then okay, now I know who I'm talking about. So they won't get worried ahead of time. Is that what it is?
I think so. So look, and people are going to debate like crazy on this.
Yeah.
Oh, well, if I don't know their title, I won't know how to position the thing. How to position the product to the title instantaneously. You don't need to prep. If you can't tailor the value prop of your solution like that based on someone's title, if you can't shake someone's hand, or I guess we don't do that anymore. If you can't wave to a prospect and if you can't wave to a prospect and then say, I'm the CEO, and then what value prop to give, come on. Then we need to go back to onboarding, and we need to make sure that your company is giving you the resources you need to be successful. Everyone should be able to do it. The truth is, a lot of times you read the title, you'll do research. SDRs will do a bunch of this research, and none of it comes up on the cold call. Basically none of it. And sometimes there's an anecdotal piece of evidence that says oh, thank God I did that research. And it gets into what's called results-oriented thinking, which sounds super good. Oh, I'm results oriented in my thinking. It's actually kind of bad in a lot of cases, or at least in the world of cold calling. And the reason why is because you start thinking that something that worked this one time will work again. And it was the right way to do something. Sometimes the
wow.
wrong way to do something works.
Yeah.
It doesn't work a high enough percentage of the time for it to be worth doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So like for instance, like we know for a fact what works for someone won't always work across the board,
Sure.
depending who they're speaking to, right? Because some are more receptive towards email, some are more receptive through LinkedIn, maybe Twitter. Well, that's just another bump, but some prefer a phone call. and just based on what you just told me, I would imagine probably they were like do research on, oh, they did this and that, XYZ, and then they bring up to the company, hey Kyle, I did research on 1, 2, 3. And then was that relevant to you? And the answer would probably when some was yes. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I actually want to challenge something you said,
Yeah.
which is the method of communication the prospect prefers. Like, we talk about this a lot, and I agree and disagree at the same time. The prospect's going to have a method of communication they prefer. They might prefer you email them, but that doesn't mean that's how you're getting the meeting. So just because they don't prefer to be cold called doesn't mean cold calling isn't the right thing to do. And that's a very important distinction to make, because oftentimes I see people getting caught in this trap of trying all of these different methods to see which one the person prefers. And then they save the calling to the very end, which is the quickest. It is so fast. When you get someone on the phone, you get instant feedback. So why not just call them first?
Yes. Okay, Kyle, I want to piggyback on this. I'm just like you. If it came down to one channel specific choice, for me, it would be the phone. And I imagine that's just like for you too. And even though it is the oldest and the first technology that was ever brought in the world, it is, I would still say, still the most effective today. We just got to ask them the right questions and asking for permission, just disarming them. And I really believe some SDRs and BDRs out there, and I'm sure you would agree too, because they would not prefer the phone. Therefore, they said, you know what, let me try and see how this guy do it. And then what happens is that they try to make a point out of it and to make a result and to put it in memos and be like, this person rather communicate through email, when really, in fact, they're just scared of the phone themselves.
Yeah, 100%. That's 100% true. And
Wow.
the phone works. I get it's inefficient, but we try to pretend like the SDR role is efficient. It's not. If you're tailoring every email you're sending out, your response rates are still low. Like,
Yeah.
we're almost trading. We're trading like inefficiency on clicking a phone call and trying to talk to people for doing research and using a, like, oh, your college sports team did well last week, and I get it. And I do think, I don't want people to misunderstand me. I do think it's valuable researching, customizing your emails. Like, I think all of that is valuable, but I also believe that you need to use the phone. And
Yeah.
I think it's underutilized. I mean, I'm very confident it's underutilized, but I think if people were to use it a little bit more, and especially as like a first touch, like, let's just try to get somebody on the phone here, I think they would be pretty impressed by the results.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So Kyle, let's dive into this. So there's a lot of, and it's gonna be ongoing for those who listen to it, especially the new and young SDR and BDRs. They're gonna be phone shy straight off the bat. Like, in your experience, what kind of methodology do you believe that's best, and just really sit down and get them bottom with that process? Like, what in your experience, what do you find working when it comes to
Throwing them in.
throw you in the
That's
woods,
what I
right?
do with everybody. Just throw them in. Because here's the deal. You're never going to be 100% comfortable at cold calling. Never. I could pick up the phone right now. I'll do a good job, but you think I'm 100% comfortable? No, I'm calling a stranger out of nowhere, right? There's no, you almost never get to a point of 100% comfortability. It's not the same as sitting on the couch. But when you have the repetitions, it's not scary anymore. And then on top of that, the other big lever you have to pull is tone. So if I'm a brand new SDR, I'm working on tone of voice is my number one thing. How do I sound on the phone? That's your biggest lever. It's even more important than script, I think. Maybe it's debatable, but I would argue that tone of voice, if you look at the best SDRs, like people who are just unbelievable, they sound really good on the phone. Really good.
Yes.
That's your biggest lever. And then after that, it's the script. It's all of these other things.
Yes. tonability, really, really, really important, right? Like you're calling someone out, that's the first thing they hear. And like Alan D. Hollis said, we had a conversation a while back too. He says like the first thing they hear is like a punch in the face. You know, you really gotta say, "Hey, Kyle, it's Jackson here with 10 Down. Did I catch you at a good time?" And you really got to just have that voice, right? So let's talk about tonability and really able to match. So this is a big topic too when it comes to cold calling, Kyle, right? Tonability is one thing. How do you sound? What are you saying? And what are you trying to do? But it's also, if when they respond, you really want to match their voice. If they're talking low, you talk low. If they're talking high, we talk high. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's very easy to over optimize this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I personally, one, my tone is kind of hard to change. I sound like this regardless of what I do.
Yeah.
And it's funny. When
I
I
love
was,
it, by the way.
this is a funny story. When I started as an SDR, I was cold calling salons and spas. So imagine you're working in a salon, like it was primarily female owners of these salons, and they were actively cutting someone's hair when I called them. And this is the voice they get. I'm sorry, we can do better, folks. You know, but but here's the deal. So tone is really important. I'm less worried about matching the tone of the other person, and I'm more worried about matching the tone of what you're saying, like the spirit of what you're saying. If you're talking about something that's concerning, or if you're giving if you're verbally giving a case study, like we worked with somebody and originally they were having this challenge, changing your tone for when you're talking about the challenges makes a lot of sense. And then having enthusiasm. This is so funny. I have a weekly newsletter. I actually think you're on it. I think you told me you
Yeah,
signed
yes,
up
I
for
am.
it. But
Sure
if
did.
you read my newsletter, I think it was last week. It might have been, maybe it was the week before. I actually talk about enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And enthusiasm is so important in sales, but especially getting cold called. Like I have heard so many cold calls. You can get my cell phone number on all of these platforms. Like I don't, whoever you're using for data, they have my cell phone. I don't get very many cold calls because everyone's afraid. But when someone cold calls me, I immediately know if they're good or not, just from how enthusiastic they sound, just what their tone of voice is. And if they sound good, they have my attention.
Wow. Okay. I love that. And I would say, because you as SDR manager, you came from the front line and you know who's good or not. And if they really deserve it, you would really just give them a shot and give them a piece of your time. Is that what it is?
Yeah. I mean, I also want to hear their strategy. Like maybe they have something good that I had never considered before. I mean, look, so when it comes to sales development, especially, this is probably true for broader sales, but especially sales development in my experience. You really, when they zig, you have to zag. So if everybody's sending a bunch of emails, then you should be cold calling like crazy. And then
Oh,
vice versa,
wow.
right? Like for example, let me give you a great example. The emails, when you're sending out emails to people, everyone's talking about subject lines. Oh, what subject line is the best? Which has the best open rate? Everyone's looking at data of subject lines. Well, there's one big problem with looking at your subject line data. It's only the data on the subject lines you've tried. So we can
Yes.
optimize based on our own little box. But let me tell you something that's interesting. You want to know the subject line that I found to be the most successful today?
Yes. Tell us, please.
It is literally parentheses, no subject, parentheses. Because that's, if you don't put a subject line, that's what Google auto populates as the subject. And people not only open it, they respond to it, they treat it like a normal email. They don't think it's spam. They
Oh,
just
wow.
respond, and it's my best performer today. That doesn't mean it's going to be good after people listen to this and everyone starts using it.
Right.
But this is just an example. When they zig, you zag. Also,
Wow.
try subject lines that are super, super short. You know, like if you're selling to, I don't know, if you're selling to sales teams, like a sales automation or something, some sales tool, right? If that's what you're selling, then
Yeah.
use a subject line sales team. Like sometimes we just get so complicated with the things we do when it's like, why don't we strip it all away? Just say sales team. And if it kind of looks like an internal email, don't you think that someone's going to open it? Like you have to think of the person who's going to be consuming the email. And if they just see the subject sales team, or if they see no subject, they're going to go, wait, what is this? Or, oh,
Yeah.
sales team, I run a sales team. Click, open it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Kyle, I love that. I have never heard of that strategy that you said before. Well, I mean, I seen it been done. I'm talking about zigzag. You know, people zig and you zag, and it's just like breaking through the noise, right? Doing something that everyone else not doing. You know, someone's doing all emails, you might as well shoot a video. If someone's not doing video, you might as well do a cold call.
Yeah.
And I love that zigzag. So I want to talk about something real quick. And I'm not sure. I think you probably know what it is. So whenever I get ready for a cold call, I like to go through what I like to call my mental switch. I hop in. Once I'm on the phone, I am dialed in. I don't, I lock my doors. I put my card up. Don't touch me. Don't talk to me. Don't bother me. And one of it I use is sense. For instance, my lip balm here. I noticed you were doing that too. Do you use the sense of power to do something like that, or does that just doing your lip balm in general?
Oh, you said sense like smells?
Yeah.
No, I don't. No.
Okay. No, I take that back because I noticed you were doing your lip balm earlier too. I thought you used like the sense of smell
Oh
every time
yeah,
you get ready for a podcast. Or something.
yeah. No, I was before. I was telling you I like to cycle, and my
Yeah.
lips have been getting chapped lately. So yeah, just putting
Gotcha.
putting chapstick on.
Gotcha. Okay. No, I guess because I learned this like 2 years ago. There's this. Are you familiar with some guy named Jordan Harbinger? He's like a big podcaster in San Francisco too.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually know him personally. He's a friend of mine.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Wow.
I know Jordan.
Okay. I love Jordan. I became a big fan of him about 2 years ago. This is right before when he was still at the Art of Charm before that thing happened.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite episodes with him, he talked about what some guy was about studying, where you study for a test, and it's like a mental switch. You study at home, you study at a library, and one thing you can use is the sense of smell. And every time you just smell it, you're studying. So when you go to take it in
Right.
class, you just use that smell, and it'll trigger some kind of psychological event that will give you feedback with that. Okay.
Yeah, so I know that actually from Tony Robbins. I believe it's called anchoring. It's like an old NLP, which stands for neuro linguistic programming. It's like an old NLP technique, and I believe it's called
Oh,
anchoring. It's where you do something repeatedly whenever you're in a specific state, and then eventually it sort of programs your mind to when you do that thing, it's going to trigger you to be in the same physical state or mind state
yes.
as when you were doing it before. This is also the same logic behind habit stacking. So I don't know if you've read any books on habits. One of them
Have
that's
not.
really good is Atomic Habits. And there's a concept called habit stacking. So for example, everyone brushes their teeth at night or first thing in the morning, you brush your teeth. Well, what you can do, you already have the habit of brushing your teeth. You can actually stack another habit onto it. So
Oh,
right after you brush your teeth, yet you then do this. And then after you do that and you build that habit, then after you brush your teeth, let's say after you brush your teeth, you read a book for 30 minutes. Brush my teeth, then I read a book for 30 minutes. That becomes your habit. Now you're reading
wow.
a book for 30 minutes every day, every time you brush your teeth. And then we can stack another habit. Go for a 30-minute jog. So now brush your teeth, read a book for 30 minutes, go for a 30-minute jog. It's the same sort of idea where you're almost tying you're tying mindset, I mean even physical feeling to a particular action, or like putting on chapstick, or another one's like squeezing your fingers, or even to other habits, and you're linking them together.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. So thank you for sharing that. I have never heard of that, so I'm gonna have to take a stab at that. I know for a fact my routine's just for every time I wake up, I start out with like his most motivational speeches that I download on YouTube. So I have like hundreds of them, and just
Do you
stretch
know
and
Les
stuff.
Brown?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Bach
Yeah.
with the feathers flock together.
Yeah. So I'm a big
Man,
Les Brown
yes.
fan. I met him when I was a kid, actually,
No
and
way.
yeah, he's a great guy. And one of my favorite speeches is him when he's talking about getting into the radio station. And I don't
Yeah,
know if you've heard this or not. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, everyone should go and watch this. If you type in Les Brown, you gotta be hungry. It is
Yep.
probably one of the best speeches I've ever heard. And if you haven't heard it, you should go listen to it. It's basically about his journey trying to get a job at a radio station, how he
Yes.
eventually gets that job, and then sort of the risks that he takes in order to put himself in a position and make his own luck in order to advance in that space. It's a very, very, very powerful story.
Yes. Yes. I know what you're talking about. I have that one downloaded too. Actually, no, not downloaded, but I heard it several times before. This is when he's, like you mentioned, he's trying to get, I think it was a limo driving job or something, right? He kept walking in the
Well,
office.
that's the first role that
Is it-
they gave him when he goes to the radio station. He had to, the guy said no to him like 4 times, 5 times or something. And
Yeah.
finally he says, go get me some coffee.
Yes.
And then his job was to to pick up celebrities from the airport, drive them back to the radio station for the interviews. He didn't even have a driver's license. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's a really powerful story. And everybody, if you look up Les Brown, You Gotta Be Hungry. I'll actually probably do this week on my newsletter. I'll feature it because I think it's such a powerful story, and I try to watch it often. And that's the
Yeah.
one that I keep going back to, and it gets me so inspired.
Yeah. To the best of my recollection, he comes in, he says something like, hey, I want to work for you. He said, get out of here. And he comes back, hey, I
Yep.
want to work, get out of here. Get out of here. And he goes, hey, I want to work for you. Like, go grab me some coffee, right? He said, you got to be
Yep.
hungry. You got to be
Yep.
hungry.
Yeah. It is very powerful, and Les Brown is one of the best for sure.
Yeah, Kyle, I love that. You mentioned, and you also mentioned habit stacking too, which is funny because I'm a big Jim Brown fan too. I'm sure you know who that is.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's funny about
Yeah.
wall stacker is
Oh,
motivation
there you go.
gets you started, right? But habits
Keep you going.
Yeah, I love that. Kyle,
Yeah.
let's talk about your article and blog. So you wrote a book.
Sure.
And I'm a big fan of your blog, by the way. Happy subscriber. How did you start? Hey, so talk to us about your blog. Like, how did you get started with that? And then you really just got your own domain. I'd imagine you took action to the point where, you know what? I want my own source of credibility. In case someone wants to know who I am, I can redirect them to here and let me purchase this domain. And just, you have to pay like a monthly website stuff on that too. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so I can talk to you about that for sure. So first of all, the underbelly of all this is I really like writing. After writing my book and then rewriting it, if anyone read the first version of my book and then the second version, 2 totally different books. They're literally word for word. I don't think there's any 2 words that are the same in the books. I just got so much better at writing after writing the first, and then when I reread the first one, I was like, okay, we need to fix some of this stuff. It didn't have much structure, so then I rewrote the whole thing. And through that process, I became really, I honestly just love writing. I really enjoy it. And so I wanted to write often, and I wanted a domain to do it, like put it on a website and let people read it. I guess I could post it on LinkedIn and stuff, but then I don't know, it seemed like it got lost, and I wanted a place that was mine and I could do with it what I want, and I could provide like more materials for people if they'll find it helpful. I have download links and stuff. Like I try to provide as much value as possible. And so yeah, I bought the domain name. I use Squarespace. It's super simple. I've built a lot of websites. So I actually used to run a content website. This was a while ago. I had over 30 employees, and we were getting close to 1 million views on the site every month. So I have experience building websites. Are super simple, especially now with Squarespace and stuff. It's so easy. Back then it was a lot harder. So yeah, I just bought the domain name, and now I just write. I write probably an article a week now. Sometimes I go on breaks, but.
Okay. And if for our listeners here, if they want to come in and say, hey, you know what, I want to check it out, how do they? What's the domain for that?
The domain name is Vouris.com. So it's V as in Victor, OURIS.
Yeah.
It's the last 5 letters of my last name, .com.
Nice. There it is, Vouris.com. So, Kyle, I know we're running up the hour here too, and I really want to just knock down a few questions real quick just to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, of course.
So, you're a very well-known SDR manager, SDR leader in the sales space. You're credited. You've done the work. You were rated at Inside Sales for 2017 top 25 sales development leader. In your eyes today, when it comes to sales development, what's broken?
So it's tough. It really depends on the company. So it's hard to make blanket what's broken statements because every company has something different that's broken. If I had to pin something down that comes up a lot, and it's a little controversial, is I do feel sometimes there's too much of an emphasis on customization and tailoring emails that go out to prospects. So we kind of touched on it earlier. Like I said, not something that's broken. Like I see value in that, and I do, and it definitely works. Like there's no doubt. But the amount of time that goes into customizing these emails sometimes gets way out of control. And
Wow.
anybody who runs a company, any CEO, maybe even VPs of sales, they've seen this before, either early on while they were growing the company, maybe their first SDR teams, maybe even today they run into the challenge. It is very easy to get caught up in the customization cycle and spend way too much time customizing. So that's probably what comes up the most.
Would this be considered over personalization?
Maybe. I mean, look, you're in the game. You're in the game. Like, what are you seeing when you go? Like sometimes it's great. Like for some industries, I'm sure it's phenomenal because like every VP of sales has written an article at this point, right? So if I'm going to tailor an email to a VP of sales, I'll just go read one of their articles and say, hey, I love this part of your article. Like that makes so much sense to me, right? That's valuable. But a lot of times, if you're not selling to salespeople or you're not selling to people who write content or they do blog posts or hop on podcasts, you're like you're just talking about their college. Like, does it take 30 minutes to write this? Like, no, it doesn't. But we're
Oh
like,
man.
sometimes people get caught in this trap where they're like searching and searching. Like, man, if I can just find
Oh.
the one thing that I could tailor this email, this guy will surely respond. And then they don't respond and you're bummed, So
Okay.
that's probably what I
Okay.
see happen often.
Oh man, this is funny. Okay, I want to share two things real quick. And this
Okay.
everything you just mentioned right now just clicked back to me when I first started as an SDR at Berkshire Systems 2018, about almost 2 years ago. I remember this one. So Berkshire, they provide this e-procurement platform for like hotel and hotel management companies. So you can buy good services, pay, whatever. And I remember I couldn't find this. I looked on this guy's LinkedIn. I couldn't find him anywhere on the web. And I was fairly new. And the subject headline was the college that he went to. And you open up the message, just like trying to sell. The message was wrong, so just trying to sell the product. And he got pissed, and he's like responding, "Hey, why is the subject line the college I went to? This has nothing to do with it." That's number one. And I think another good example when I was still fairly new there too as well. So I I look at their hotel management company, right? And then I look at the hotels that they're managing. And then I was trying to think outside the box, try to be like a cool SDR to personalize, right? So you know what I did? I literally went to Yelp and typed in that hotel and looked up the hotel that had bad reviews. I would copy and paste those bad reviews and I would send it to that guy and say, hey, this is one of the hotels you're doing is the bad reviews. Typically this person is complaining because you guys didn't have this on stock. Normally when that happened, you guys don't have a solution in place. And this is what we do. No response whatsoever. And I think that would tie to what you were mentioning, right? Like you're just over personalized. It's not going anywhere.
Well, yeah, and maybe that was the right thing to do. Like so all of this stuff you need to try for yourself. But a lot of times the advice that's given to SDRs is great advice, and the person giving the advice is totally in the right. They're giving a cool thing that works for them. But no one's telling you to stop doing the fundamentals. And that's where I think people get a little mixed up. It's because they see all of this advice on LinkedIn. They're reading all these different tricks and hacks and all of this cool stuff, and they're putting a lot of energy into there. But the people giving the advice never said to stop the fundamentals. Still make your calls. Still send your emails in traditional way. Don't rip and replace. Just experiment a little bit. Start implementing this into your emails or into your cold calls. See if it works. So I think that's part of it. But I mean, the classic one is what, the 3x3, like find three things in 3 minutes. Like,
yeah.
That's a good rule. if you're spending only 3 minutes, now you can send a lot of emails that way. But that's, people aren't following it. They're spending a lot of time, and I think there's a point of diminishing return.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it's funny that 3x3, everyone heard of that.
Yeah, but they love to ignore it. The truth is, it's like it's a lot easier to get kind of bogged down doing research than it is to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, it's Kyle."
There's the comedy right there. Kyle, so just before we start wrapping this up real quick, so when it comes for you as an SDR leader, let's say fresh kid out of school, I just graduated. You know what? Screw this. I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to be a lawyer. I'm gonna go into tech sales. What do you look for into when it comes to hiring a successful SDR and BDR?
First, I sit them down and say, "You sure you don't want to be a doctor? You spent a lot of time doing that. You might want to consider it." I mean, the truth is, no one talks about it, but lawyers. I mean, I know salespeople. I know a lot of salespeople who make more than the average doctor and the average lawyer. So
Yeah.
it's not a bad career path by any means. But what advice do I give to a brand new SDR? Somebody who's, "Hey, I'm trying to get a job. I've never been SDR before." A couple of things. One is discipline. You have to be disciplined. Get in early, leave late, figure it out. Make the calls, change things if you have to, sound good on the phone, and become very good. And then when you're at a point to where you don't need to work 12 hours in order to hit your number, then implement a little life back into your work and have that work-life balance. But if you're a
Nice.
brand new SDR, you need to figure out how to do the job. And I mean, if you're at, like, I've been asked a ton of times, like, "What's work-life balance at your company?" Like when I'm interviewing, it's like, okay.
Don't
I
exist.
mean, yeah, I mean, it's honestly, like, we have a pretty good work-life balance, but the the problem is the spirit of the question. It's and I believe, I want to preface this, I believe that having work-life balance is incredibly important, but it doesn't mean everybody has the luxury in the moment to have work-life balance. You need to figure out how to do the job really well. There's a learning curve. It's hard. It's going to put you in uncomfortable positions. And if you don't work through that, then you're not going to make it as an SDR or as a salesperson or as anything really. So what I would originally tell people is, like, stop with anything else other than, let me get really good at this. Consume content, learn the product, learn how the people who are booking the most meetings are doing it and replicate it, and then start worrying about all of these external stuff. But I hear
Oh
way
my
too
God.
much people worried about things that are outside of becoming the best possible SDR.
Yes. Okay. That was like music to my ears. I know exactly what you're talking about because I went through that too when I first started. And what really, when we, this is like you mentioned, this is it's like an arts and craft project, right? It's like practicing personal development, getting better each and every day,
Sure.
asking for feedback, knowing what to do, when to do. But when it comes to this gig, you really shouldn't be worrying about work-life balance because you really got to get it down, and you only have a specific time frame to do so. But it's just a mountain you got to overcome, and once you overcome it, then things will start looking like a little brighter, and then work-life balance. And once you get good, so to speak, but you really gotta get there before you can. It's like isn't, I would say it's an obstacle you would have to overcome before you achieve some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, there's always an obstacle. It's always tough. I mean, I write an example in my book. It's pretty early on. You might remember it, but I had an experience when I was an SDR where I was, and I'll tell the short version. I write about it in the book. I think it makes a really strong point. And I essentially was in a position where it looked like I wasn't going to hit my number, and I needed to in order to get promoted. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is impossible." And I had a full-on panic attack. It's the first and only panic attack I've ever had. And I don't have panic attacks. I'm pretty intense. But I totally broke down. I was crying. I was in the stairwell of the building, like, just totally a wreck. I couldn't even breathe. I was like, I don't know
Oh
if you had a
wow.
panic attack, but it's both a physical and a mental experience, and it's pretty bad. And where I was I was in a position where what I needed to achieve seemed unachievable. And I was coming to grips with the fact that I was in a position where I have two options. I can either A, give 100% effort and risk failing, or B, give 50% effort. I'm guaranteed to fail with option B, but at least I protect my ego because I didn't actually try, right? Like failing is a lot worse when you were trying really hard and you failed. Well, it's very, very common in the world of sales development because has its ups and its downs. It's very, very common when things get incredibly tough to step off the gas, and you guarantee failure in that case. But
Wow.
you have two options. Option A, give 100% risk failing. And if you fail, at least you gave it your all. But there's that small chance that you might not fail and you might just push through. I'll take that small chance of success over guaranteed failure every single day. And everyone should, but not everyone will.
Wow. Okay. Yes. 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 That was the price of admission right there. Thank you for sharing that, Kyle. I love that
It was at
story.
the
And
end.
yeah, and you know what? That just tells us who you really are, right? Because there are those who just stops in the middle of the road, said, you know what? Screw this. Fuck this, man. I'm out. I'm gonna start applying around
Yep.
or whatever. But there are those who
Yep.
just go, you know what? I'm gonna go down swinging. I'm not gonna let this get back to me. I'm gonna go all out. I'm gonna go all in. And if I don't get it, hey, at least I knew I did my best rather than just giving up early on in the process. And that's exactly what you did, man. So,
Yeah, I mean, another anecdote I can leave you with is this is something my dad was really big on, and this is where I get this from. I think I spoke about it on David's podcast as well. But there's this concept of now what? Now what? So what the story for me is if I had some challenges and there were adversities, I would go to my dad and say, "Hey, I can't achieve X because of A, B, and C." And he would argue with me saying, "Yeah, you can. Just keep working, keep doing, put the effort in, et cetera, et cetera." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand A, B, and C." And he's like, "I don't think that's true." And I'm like, "No, it is true. They're out to get me, whatever it is, right?" And
victim role.
my dad would say, "Okay, let's say you're right. Let's say everything A, B, and C. Let's say all of that is true. Now what?"
Wow.
And that's a powerful statement. And it didn't hit me until I was much older, right? But
Yeah.
it's pretty powerful because no matter what obstacles you have, like you have to do something. Now what? Okay, well, let me problem solve. Let me figure out how to get over the obstacle, as opposed to just throwing up your hands and throwing in the towel. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, isn't it crazy to like meet something that's a little tough and just go, "All right, well, it was a good run," right? Doesn't it just seem nuts? So, like, I'd much rather push through and overcome the obstacle. I'd rather ask myself, now what? Answer the question, and then execute on the new solution.
Yeah. Wow. Kyle, thank you for sharing that. This was really super irrelevant, especially to now. Once a year when the new generation graduating and jumps into tech and sales world, because, and I might get a little heat for this, and I'm not saying it's for everybody, but majority of them got things like, oh, they're like spoiled, things were handed to you, they never had to get these obstacles. And once they hit this one little obstacle, it's like, oh man, fuck this, I'm out. Or like, they do a code call and then they catch someone at the wrong time. Maybe they're calling SMBs, and experienced this when SMBs are more toned to throw you across the wall when it comes to picking up the phone. And if you're doing it wrong, they're like, you know what? Screw you, Kyle. Stop calling me, and just hang up. And they'll
Yep.
just be like, I'm done with the phone. I'm gonna go crawl in the fetus, and I'll just cry like a little baby.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is tough, and look, you never know how someone's going to react when they hit those types of situations. When you're hiring, you try to hire the right people, but you're not always right. Some companies, they have maybe being aggressive by using the word philosophy, but their strategy is we'll hire and see who sticks, right? And they expect a really
Wow.
high turnover in their SDR organization because of it, which is fine. It's a strategy. It definitely, there's pros and cons to everything. Um, I tried to do a little bit more on the front end on the hiring side and tried to do my best to enable my team to be as successful as possible. But I get it. If you're hiring a lot of SDRs, you have to expect a certain level of turnover. So you never know what someone's going to do is the point. And always, all you can control is what you do. And I try to look at myself and say, if I do everything I can, and I'm truly happy with how I train these people or how I mentored them, then I'm in a good place. Doesn't mean there wasn't anything I could learn from the experience, or absolutely is, but I'm in a good place. I know I did the right thing, and I think that's a good mentality to have. Focus on yourself and do the best you can do. Hold yourself to a standard. Learn when things happen, improve, but at the end of the day, like, don't compromise on your own standard.
Wow. Okay. I love that right there. It's just like what Jim Rohn says. You know, he says one of his famous quote unquote is, if you want things to change, you have to change.
Yep.
And man, that was amazing. All right. So Kyle, just to wrap things up here, you know, man, I'm just so thankful for you hopping on. This is truly amazing for me. Is there anyone you got to give special thanks to? And if there's someone on the pod listening right now, want to reach out to you, Kyle, I read your blog, I've got your book, I want to say thank you. What's the best way to do so?
Just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll, send me a connection request. I'll accept you. You can email me. Everyone has a tool to find my email. You can cold call me. That'd be the dream. If you cold call me, then I'm the happiest person. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people email me saying, hey, I gave you a call earlier today, and I know they didn't because I know I didn't get a call. Like, I hate that. I absolutely hate that. I literally respond, no, you didn't. Next. So cold call me. Do whatever you want to do. Happy to chat. Happy to provide any value I can.
Okay, for sure. You know, I just want to end this with this quick story too. It's funny that you mentioned that because you're familiar with James Thornburg, right? 27-second guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, I actually cold called him about 2 months ago to ask him to come on a pod. I was like, hey, man, I have 27-second time. Explain the reason for my call. He's like, go ahead. I was like, yeah, you know, I do this podcast. I love your stuff. Was wanting to be open to it. He's like, no, don't call me, man. They're in the wrong time, whatever. But yeah, that's all right, guys. Without further ado, we'd like to go ahead and thank you again, Mr. Kyle VamVouris.
Thanks, guys. It was fun.